Hey gang, Matt again. If you're a longtime fan of the show, you may recall from my previous Morphtronic Telefon video how I mentioned Master Duel was missing some cards that would improve the deck. Well, I've got some good news for you, friend. Well, really bad news for anyone on ladder that has to play against this deck, but good news if you like just purely nefarious, degenerate, villainous combo decks. They finally released the Duke Devlin support in Master Duel, and of course they released it in the most god-awful way possible via the legacy packs, and they put them in the SR slots. I opened all of my legacy packs that were just, collecting dust, and I did not get a single copy of either of them. So lucky me, I got to blow 180 SR dust just to bring you the deck today. Once again, I am showcasing Morphtronic Telefon Synchro. Now, before we get into this, my attorney advised me that I needed to give this warning. If you choose to take this deck to ladder, you are most likely in violation of the Geneva Convention's provisions regarding torture, as well as cruel, inhumane, or otherwise degrading treatment or punishment. Using this deck violates multiple federal laws with varying degrees of fines and/or prison time. If you are not located in the U.S. or you are not playing on a region-locked account, this deck most likely violates many foreign laws. Please consult with your own attorney before you decide to play with this deck. This video is purely for educational purposes and is only here to shine a light on Konami's card design. With that out of the way, let's look at the deck real quick. I wanted to keep this video short as I basically already released a 46-minute profile on the deck, which I will link here and in the description. If you wanted to watch a more thorough review of the deck, as well as the cards in action, be sure to check that out. But for this video, I mainly wanted to focus on what's new, what's changed, and what that accomplishes for the deck. The basic premise of the deck hasn't changed. We want to set up the Telefon loop, which is accomplished by having a Telefon on board and a Telefon engraved. There are many ways to achieve that setup, and I went over most of them in the previous video. But the newly released Duke Devlin support gives us another way to set up the same loop, which I'll get into. And then once you have that very basic loop set up, from there you can summon an almost infinite number of times. Our combo line is basically going to use, well, not basically, it is going to use every single monster in our extra deck. And we achieve this by just doing the classic Telefon for Telefon, Telefon for Telefon, Telefon for Telefon, almost ad infinitum, granting us access to the entirety of our extra deck in our first turn, and just an end board of negates, as well as very difficult to deal with monsters. And thanks to Dimension Dice, that's easier than ever. So what does Dimension Dice do? Dimension Dice allows you to tribute a monster with an effect that requires a die roll, and then special summon a monster from the deck that also requires a die roll. Well, guess what? That does not say you need to summon a different monster. It just says you need to summon a monster with a die roll, so you can tribute a Morphtronic Telefon in order to get another Morphtronic Telefon on the board, and that's the loop right there. And also, you don't typically need to do it, but there is not a once per turn on this card, which is nice, and that comes up occasionally. And then, of course, why are we on the field spell? Well, the field spell just allows you to add one copy of Dimension Dice to your hand. So that means we're effectively on 6 copies of this card. So in a 40 card deck, we have a 57% chance of seeing this card in our opening hand, basically. This could have been over 60%, but Konami took our gosh darn terraforming away, and I'll, of course, never forgive them for that. But anyway, these cards have greatly improved the consistency of the deck. They've also given the deck the ability to sometimes play through Interruption slightly better, as you can fish for and play through an Ash Blossom better, but you're also able to, like, for example, you can Dimension Dice a Telefon that's been hit by an Infinite Impermanence to summon your third Telefon that's in deck, and keep the loop going from there. So real briefly, what's changed in this deck, you may recall my prior build, I was on a Punk engine. That's basically been replaced by the dice cards, which freed up a couple main deck slots, as well as one extra deck slot. I replaced 2 of the slots with Morphtronic Selfon. He's also a monster that requires a die roll, so you can tribute him off with Dimension Dice to get a Telefon on board. But you can also get it twisted with his own effect in order to find Telefon off the top of your deck. For the extra deck, I used the free slot to include one of copy of Ensemble Blue Robin, just as even more interruption that we're easily able to go into just by overlaying 2 Telefons on top of each other at the end of our combo line. That basically covers the changes from the old deck and a quick review of the new stuff. Just to show it again, I'll go over the combo line for the deck, and then I'll briefly showcase the deck in action. So let's see what the deck can do. Buckle up, friends. This combo is annoyingly long. In order to get the loop set up, it's a Telefon on board that can activate its effect and a Telefon on grave. There are multiple ways with this deck to set it up. I'm not going to go over all of them here. I did go over most of the common ways in the older videos, so be sure to check that out if this is like your first time seeing the deck. There's also some ways I didn't even like include in the deck or go over there, so I guess you can look those up if you want to. But other than that, the way I showcase it here is the typical way that you are going to get the loop set up and what you'll do afterwards. You'll get a Telefon on board, Telefon engraved, go into Link Karibo, go into Barricade Board Blocker, go Auroradon, and then just go off from there. The combo is extremely long, but I would probably call it an easy combo, as the combo is literally just Telefon for Telefon, Telefon for Telefon, and so on. The hardest part is keeping track of which Telefon hasn't used its effect yet. I mean, Master Duel makes that very easy for us, luckily, but just making sure you're summoning your Telefons in attack, you're not accidentally activating your effects while the board is full, and make sure you're not accidentally synchroing off the one that can still activate its effect. But honestly, feel free to somewhat take your time with this deck. Double check yourself before synchro summoning. You may be surprised, but the timer is not your enemy with this deck. I mean, I was usually ending with plenty of time still left on the timer, especially like as soon as you pass, you get a bunch of time added onto the timer. So I would not be worried about that. The timer does not run during summon animations and die rolls, and boy, oh boy, do we spam those with this deck. If you just want to play a deck where you annoy your opponent by putting a bunch of crap on their screen, then between the die rolls and the summon animations, this is definitely the deck for you. But with that, let's go ahead and review the line. All right, let's go ahead and get the Telefon loop set up, and we'll do it with the new card. So we'll go ahead and activate the field spell, and then we'll add Dimension Dice to hand. We'll normal summon Telefon, activate Dimension Dice, and yes, this is literally just that easy. Tribute that Telefon. In order to special summon a Telefon from the deck, make sure we're special summoning an attack mode, of course. Now we have Telefon on board that can activate the effect. We have Telefon engraved, so go ahead and activate the effect. Roll a die. Oh boy, life points. We'll take it. We rolled a 4. Wow, that's enough to special summon Telefon from grave. So we'll tribute off that Telefon. We'll go into Link Karibo. And wow, we have a Telefon on board that can activate its effect with a Telefon on grave. So we'll activate Telefon. And wow, we rolled enough to special summon a Telefon from grave. So get Telefon on board. And now we'll link off with that Telefon to use the effect. We'll go into Barricade Board Blocker. No real reason to activate the effect. I mean, I guess there's no reason not to, but it's just we'll save cards in our hand. So now we'll activate Telefon for Telefon. Now we need to link off 2 machine monsters to go into Auroradon. And then activate Auroradon's effect. Telefon for Telefon. Activate Auroradon's effect. Make sure you're activating the second effect, not the first effect. And then make sure you're tributing off the Telefon that's already used its effect. And from here, you'll special summon O-Lion from the deck. Don't know why they decided to keep Auroradon in the game. He's still only doing bullcrap, but, you know, lucky for us. So you'll sync off O-Lion and one of the tokens in order to go into Hyper Librarian. Make sure Hyper Librarian is in the EMZ. And activate O-Lion's Grave effect to get an extra token. Then Telefon for Telefon. And then just get our first negate up on the board. Go ahead and link off Telefon and one of the tokens in order to go into Herald. That'll trigger Hyper Librarian, get that free draw. Activate Telefon. Go ahead and grab Telefon. Synchro off Telefon and a token to go into Cupid Pitch. Hyper Librarian will trigger again, so we'll Cupid, and then Cupid Pitch effect will activate. We want to make sure we do the increase stars. Activate Telefon's effect. Get Telefon. Now Synchro off Cupid Pitch and the token to go into Chaos Ruler. And you want to make sure you're not activating Chaos Ruler's effect because of Herald on the board. Those cards would actually get milled. And also there's no reason to do it anyway. So usually I do Hyper Librarian, Chain Link 1, Cupid Pitch, Chain Link 2. That way our Hyper Librarian draw doesn't accidentally draw our search target for Cupid Pitch. And then we just decline on the Chaos Ruler effect. So then we want to add Nemesis Quarter with Cupid Pitch's effect. Hyper Librarian will draw a random card. Cool. And now we want to sync off the Telefon that's already used its effect and Chaos Ruler to go into Croco Dragon, and then that'll trigger Hyper Librarian, trigger Croco Dragon, just that extra draw, you know. Maybe that's the one card you're missing that wins us the duel, who knows. And then make sure you don't activate Croco Dragon's second effect, because that will that pops cards on the board. So we'll get 2 draws, and now Telefon for Telefon. Synchro for 10. Go into Barone. Activate Telefon. Bring back Telefon. And now we want to bring back Chaos Ruler. And lucky for us, Cupid Pitch and Barricade Board Blocker are light and dark monsters respectively. So we'll banish both of those in order to get Chaos Ruler back on the board. And now we can Synchro for 9. Go into Hot Red. That's unfortunately going to be our last Hyper Librarian draw. So once again, we're doing Telefon for Telefon, but now we need to use Hyper Librarian to Synchro again. So I'm going to start with charge. I'll get an extra draw. Might as well. Bring back that Telefon again. Synchro for 7. Go Dawn Dragster. Dragster's not going to be on the board too long. I just like Dragster. It's just like someone that Barone could revive after Barone's used during a gate. So Telefon, you know. Synchro for 8. At this point, I'm going to go Borreload. Make sure you put Borreload in the EMZ. Activate the effect. And you're going to equip Rorodon to make him 4K. Telefon won last time, and this time you can put him in defense so you can stack the top of your deck if you want. Could matter, I guess. I mean, if you're just like trying to play this super optimal, efficiently try hard, yeah. Activate defense, see what the top card of your deck is, you can rearrange them, or you can put in the bottom of the deck if it's nothing. And then, I mean, obviously it's probably never going to matter, but then you can overlay them for Awesome Blue Robin. Now you can special summon Nemesis Corridor. I usually return Chaos Ruler, maybe that comes up. And then you can use that Nemesis Corridor to go into Thunder Dragon Colossus. And then that's our end board. So, I mean, we have multiple negates, we have Interruption with Awesome Blue Robin, we have, like, any hand traps we happen to draw, and then we want to set whatever spells we want to save. And then you also, at this point, could, like, Small World for one of your hand traps. Most of our cards can bridge into, like, Ash Blossom or Veiler. It's just a matter of finding the bridge. So, just a crazy end board. Good luck to our opponent. That was pretty much everything I had for you for the combo section. There is only one combo line for the deck. It's that line, just a matter of figuring out how to get the loop set up, which will just take like some minor practice from you. Feel free to check out my old video if you want to review some of the other lines, if you get a little confused on why I'm including some cards. But other than that, here's a few duels just real quick just to showcase the deck in action. So enjoy! Here's the first tool I have up for you, and these ones I've sped up real quick just to kind of showcase what happens when we get the loop going, what the typical experience for the deck is. So if we go Linkuriboh, you know, bring back Telefon, Telefon for Telefon, Telefon for Telefon, go into Aurorodon. As soon as he sees the Aurorodon, he's out of here. Alright, next one. I went and skipped a little bit. Here comes Aurorodon. This guy actually stayed longer than I thought, so let's see if he's not going to actually let me combo off. Alright. Okay, we got negate. He's still sitting through there. I wonder if he has a board breaker or something. Alright, I guess the Stardust Charge Warrior was enough. He got sufficiently bored. Good game, I guess. Alright, another one I got for you. I got to set the loop, so we'll go ahead and speed it up for you real quick just to get through it. Wow, is that the Telefon loop? And at this point, when I had the Gizmek in the grave, I noticed he had something chainable. Since Gizmek is a light monster, I figured it was a Bystial, so I realized I need to kind of play around that. It doesn't really deal with the Telefon, but it's going to be an issue when Chaos Ruler comes up. Luckily, we do have a negate on board by that point. So keep a pitch. Bring back our Telefon, go ahead and bring back normal speed here, go into Chaos Ruler. Nothing different yet. Synchro off for 9. And at this point, he throws out a Saronir. At this point, I'm going to negate, just hope he doesn't have another Bystial that I have to worry about. And then you didn't have anything chainable after that. And I go ahead and Ash this too. I just figured, you know, why not? I'll probably get another Ash off my draws anyway. And then from here, it's just back onto the normal line, and we just lost one of our negates right off the bat, which isn't too big a deal. At this point, since I have the free war space, I can use one of my Telefons to bring back Linkuriboh, just, you know, as, I guess, some sort of interruption. And then at the end, before I go to my end phase, I go ahead and use a Small World to bridge into an Ash Blossom because I didn't have to draw another one. Because, I've already drawn a million cards. Maxie's not going to do too much for me, so we'll just Small World that Maxie off, just get that Ash. And then he starts off with that Foolish Barrel. We'll go and Ash here because he's under Colossus anyway, so, you know, that's probably the best Ash possible. He goes into his battle phase, got a little scared there, but then just ends up passing, ends up scooping. Good game. What a cool deck. Honestly, there is something here with this deck. If there's ever a world where people are running just low hand trap decks, or no hand trap decks, or just hand traps that don't interact with this very well, like the Bystials, there is possibly a time for this deck to shine. In terms of strength, I mean, what do I need to say? You've seen the end board. Can the deck you're playing right now play through that end board? I don't blame you if the answer is no. However, can the deck you're playing right now make sure I never get to set up that end board? Now here, I will blame you if that answer is no, because in terms of weakness, all the problems I went over in my previous video are still here. The deck is still 100% Feast or Famine. If you don't find the cards to combo, you're not doing anything. Newer cards add some more consistency to finding the combo and allowing us to play through some hand traps just slightly better, but interruption is still a major issue for us. Any interruption that stops the loop from getting set up or continuing, and we lose the game. Or even just, your opponent gets off max C, we lose the game. Hand traps, or even just going second and playing through a board, are always going to be the biggest hurdles for this deck. And I'm not sure there ever will exist a world where it'll consistently clear those same hurdles. And because of that, this deck's definitely a rogue option, but I don't ever see it getting above that other than just some rogue deck you might happen to catch on ladder, and you might end up getting sacked by it. In terms of fun, I mean, feel free to throw some hate my way for taking this to ladder, but yeah, this deck is fun. It is hilariously fun, especially against someone seeing the loop for the first time. It's always fun to try and guess at what point they finally scoop after they realize what's going on. The design decision to print Telefon, I'll never understand. 25 years of card design, and they print a 1-star tuner that can summon itself over and over and over. I mean, Level Eater is currently serving a life sentence for that crap, and we got Telefon at 3 for this deck. But, that's Konami. They'll never change, I guess. Going back to in terms of fun, you'll know if this is the type of deck you'll find fun, and if it's something you want to take the ladder. In terms of price, the deck kind of pricey for what you get. I mean, a lot of SRs in the main deck, and then last, of course, should you craft this in terms of price? I mean, it's not the most expensive deck out there. It's not the cheapest. I'd probably put it on the more expensive side because you need quite a few SRs for the main deck and some URs that aren't necessarily staples for the main deck. And then the extra deck's pretty expensive in terms of UR wise. I mean, a lot of these are staple cards, so you probably have a decent chunk of these if you have been a pretty consistent player. But I probably wouldn't recommend just going out and crafting it unless this is the type of deck that really appeals to you. You'll probably know if you're the type of person that would find this deck fun. I mean, first time I saw the loop, I was like, okay, yeah, I gotta at least try this. But that's pretty much all I have for you regarding this deck. I know I didn't go over it in this video, but feel free to play around with the extra deck. You don't have to do the end boards I was going for. I mean, you've got infinite summons. Look at this guy on Master Duel. He's going King Calamity. You could even do some Bish Balkan stuff if you want to, FTK. I like to have, just the slightest smidgen of honor by making a board opponent could theoretically break through rather than just winning the game on the spot. Just don't tell the feds I told you about this deck or Morphtronic Telefon. That could really screw over my current parole. But I hope you enjoyed the video. It's been fun finally having the pieces for this deck. If you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to post them below. If you enjoyed the video or found any portion of it helpful, I greatly appreciate any likes or feedback. They really help out the channel. If you'd like to see more deck profiles and combo guides, be sure to check out my other videos and subscribe to the channel. But with that, I will see you next time, friends.